Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Fridays at 5. This is our now about twice a month feature that we run through Color Vowel, English Language Training Solutions. And I'm Karen Taylor of the Color Vowel Chart. Color Vowel Chart's there behind Now. Hello, Now. Good to see you. And if anyone else has theirs handy, you can, have it ready to go as needed, because you never know when you need color vowels to solve a problem. If you're new to Color Vowel, or if you're watching this recorded session as someone new to Color Vowel, know that this is a visual tool that we use to light up the way English works and make connections between how it sounds versus how it looks, and bringing those two pieces together in new, simple, and wonderful ways. Okay. Fridays at 5 today is dedicated to the topic of working with Arabic speakers who are learning English. We're thrilled to have Dr. Robin Barr in the room, who will be giving us a treat to the phonology of Arabic, and among other things. And then Aviva Katsanel from Florida Atlantic University, who is going to share some tips and strategies that she's collected over the years, but also maybe some new ones that she's been putting together. With Color Vowel being in her world now. So I don't know, no pressure, no pressure. Dr. Robin Barr joins us from the Washington Literacy Center and American University and the University of the District of Columbia, among other organizations. She's been working with low literacy students in Washington, D.C., but has also worked with Arabic speakers and knows a great deal about Arabic.
Actually, no, I don't, but I know a lot about why my students have trouble with English. Let's put it that way. I know enough about Arabic to know where the problems are. I don't know Arabic.
No, I did not say you know Arabic.
Okay.
and so
I know about Arabic.
It is exactly. We love to know about languages, even if we don't speak all of the languages of our students. We can always be better teachers by learning about the languages of our students. I'd like to start with you all, though, our participants, and just know what, first of all, if you have specific questions about Arabic, learners of English, and what they need, a desired kind of a point that you would like to have explored. But I'll start just with this question. What do students struggle with when their first language is Arabic, learning English? What do we already know, in other words? So this is just kind of a group assessment. What do we know?
Stress patterns.
Okay.
Okay, tell us more, Linda.
Don't know enough about it to know more. That's why I'm here to learn, but that's
okay. I can talk about that.
Problems with that.
Oh, Sharon, yeah, P versus B. Yeah, that's one.
Good. So we're looking in the chat here. So certain phoneme pairs are tricky for speakers of Arabic, like P, the P versus B, like Perry and Berry, I suppose, that kind of thing. Good. And for Linda, you're mentioning stress patterns, as in the way that Arabic sounds is different in its stress treatment than in English.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Any other?
Yeah, I'd second that. So I feel like there's a clash. They're really good at using pitch, and I feel like they use stress the same way in Arabic. At least they are very clear. They imitate very well. When you tell them how to stress and where to stress, they can imitate it perfectly without even explaining what they're supposed to do at all. But then on certain words, they would just drop a syllable, or I don't know, they would just stress it very weirdly. And I'm wondering what it depends on, because sometimes they're perfect, and yet sometimes it just doesn't make sense.
Oh, I'm so glad you're asking that question, because it's not what you think. Yeah.
Okay.
That's really good.
Fabulous.
I'm curious as to who here knows Arabic and speaks Arabic, because I don't, and I would like to know if anybody here.
I'll ask the question since
Alhaj Hussein looks like you might speak Arabic.
Right, I see Siba's name. Siba, can you do a hand up if you speak Arabic? So we know who our experts are in the room. Anybody else? Aviva, you speak Hebrew and you write Hebrew.
I speak Hebrew and I do know a little Arabic,
okay.
Because I speak Hebrew, but I'm certainly not fluent in Arabic.
Well, my question regards
Definitely.
Semitic languages, and so Arabic's included in that, which is just noticing that the writing system is so different. Not only is it a different directionality, but also the treatment of vowels that are so
Yeah.
central to the way we understand English. And my question is, while Arabic doesn't write vowels in the same way, or maybe at all, that's always kind of unclear to me. I don't think it's not at all. It's like with little
The
diagrams.
long vowel, what they consider to be long vowels, they write.
Okay.
Well, what they consider to be short vowels, they don't, as far as I know.
Okay. And so with that in mind, does that mean that vowels are less central to comprehensibility in Arabic? That's a
Yes
question.
and
I have.
no. Yeah.
Okay. And if that's the case, does that mean that by contrast, that something else is at play for comprehensibility among speakers of Arabic? And would that be consonants, or is that something else? So those are
No, that's a really good question. I would like to
Yeah,
know
it
that,
is. Yeah.
because for English, we've been saying all along that for English, the most important syllable in the word is the stressed syllable, and then there's one main stress per word, and then the most important sound in that syllable is the vowel. I don't know if that's true of Arabic. I mean, what people rely on for morphology of Arabic and Hebrew are the consonants. So all the words that mean the same thing, or variants of the same word, will have the same 3 consonants, basically, and you'll
Right.
change the vowels depending on what tense you're trying to use. But because you can tell that from context, people don't always bother writing it. So it's a fascinating question. I don't know what the answer is.
right. So it's a sort of
Somebody can
the
write
idea-
somebody can write a dissertation about that, because we know for English it's the vowel. For Arabic, I don't know what the optimality theory would say. What is primary for other languages?
right.
Well, I have here at some point a little slide which shows the main problems for interference. Okay, the main causes of interference, or the main difficulties that Arabic speakers have with English. So if Dr. Barr, what Dr. Barr doesn't cover, then I might have a little.
That would
bit
be great,
to share.
because I'm not going to go into too much how to address the problems, but I am going to talk about what's going on in the mind of the Arabic speaker, and also what's going on in the mind of the English listener,
Mhm.
and how they are different. So because there's a two-way problem here, because what Arabic speakers are doing is interpreted by English speakers as something different from what they intend. So
Okay.
that's what I want to get into. Do you want me to start now?
Almost. So what I
Almost,
thought I would
okay.
do, and partly because I know we might have some newcomers, and if you are new, then welcome. And also because we have listeners from outside who will watch the recorded session, who might still be wondering, what we were just saying, basically. And I think it's relevant to share a brief glimpse of Judy Gilbert's Prosody Pyramid.
Yes, that's what I was just talking about.
Exactly. So I'll share that slideshow. It's this idea of, it's sort of a subconscious thing that English speakers have mostly, meaning we don't know how we understand each other, but linguists and applied linguists like Judy Gilbert have done the work of putting this into a visual that's pretty useful to us to understand how it is that we understand one another. And the way that she describes it is through this graphic that I'm sharing with you now, called the Prosody Pyramid. And I've inserted a phrase from a real story that my co-author Shirley Thompson has used through the years, that really cropped up in about 2002, from a student who was wandering around in New York City looking for this street. And he was wandering around saying, "Where is Canal Street? Where is Canal Street?" And he wasn't understood. He's a speaker Japanese, for what it's worth. And part of the reason he wasn't understood was that every syllable was delivered and pretty much with the same amount of importance, prominence. And what he didn't know is that there's one word that is more important than the others in any phrase. And he didn't know that canal would need to get more focus than, say, street or where. And he also, at the moment that he spoke, didn't observe that there's one syllable in the word canal that's more important than the other. and then ultimately, he wasn't observing that the listener is listening for one peak vowel. And that's sort of the so what, or the aha of the Prosody Pyramid, is this idea that we English speakers listen for the peak vowel. It's almost like a stepping stone or a way across the river of speech. And so we listen for these sounds. And this is where the color vowel chart really starts to come in. So canal is this black cat word. And that's the only color vowel we need right now, is to say black and cat, both in the sound.
Canal. Yeah.
And so when we say, where's Canal Street, in a way, the listener is hearing where is, which is a very formulaic, little question marker. And we know that it's about a place, not when is, where is Canal Street. And we hear enough of the consonants to put it in place, but that black vowel is what pins this down and lets the listener know what's being asked. Okay, so I'm going to now hand this over to Dr. Barr and ask this question, if this is the mind, the subconscious mind of the English listener speaker, what's going on in Arabic phonology?
Well, I can tell you right now that this is not the case for all languages, right? So for some languages, there is no particular syllable in the word that is more important than the others. For some languages, it's much more important to say every single consonant than to make sure the vowel has the right rhythm. Some languages have predictable rhythm, and so they don't even notice where the stress is, because it makes no difference whether you say record or record. It's automatic. It's an automatic rule. The stress is put in automatically, and so you may not be sensitive to hearing where the stress is. And this is why Nat's observation was so interesting, because I don't know which to say first. Arabic has predictable stress for Arabic, but they have a difference between long and short vowels in their system. So when we lengthen a vowel, we think we're stressing it. When they hear a lengthened vowel, they think, oh, this is a long vowel, but they don't realize that is the same as stress. So they may be very good at lengthening the vowel in the right place, Nat, because they've learned that this word in English lengthens the vowel here, right? And so it will often sound to us like the stressed syllable, but the stress rule in Arabic usually stresses the long vowel, but sometimes it'll stress a different vowel from the long vowel, and then that will be very confusing to an English listener. So that's a really interesting observation you made. Yeah, Nat.
May I just ask for clarification here right away? So they have long vowels that are sometimes stressed, sometimes they aren't. And then the other type of vowels is short, or?
Yeah, so when I say long and short, I mean time on vowel.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't mean E versus I, and
Right.
A versus A. I mean, how long?
Time on vowel, yeah.
Time on vowel. So if I'm saying, I don't know, bit and bid, it's the same sound for an English speaker, the same vowel for an English speaker, but two different sounds for a speaker of Arabic, right? So if you said Canal Street and Canal Street, those would be two different vowels. So if they hear a long ah in canal, they'll just memorize it as, okay, there's a long ah there, and they'll get what appears to be the stress correct for the English listener most of the time, like you said. So you say usually they're really good at picking it up. Well, that's because they can hear the difference between the long vowel and the short vowel, but they don't hear the stress, because stress is different in Arabic. Yeah, Karen.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to point out for anybody who needs to hear it again. We have a problem in talking about this in English, because the words long vowel and short vowel are used by two different groups of people in two very different ways, right? So if you're not familiar with the way we do it, you should know that the conventional reference of long and short is something like the long A and the short A, which would be A for long and A for short.
This would be the reading teacher's version.
Exactly. Whereas in the color vowel methodology and in linguistics in general, when we talk about long versus short, we're talking about the amount of time spent on the same sound, a short amount of time versus a long amount of time. And if you're an English speaker only, it's really hard to wrap our heads around this because we don't have a distinction consciously, right? But Bahasa Indonesian does, and Arabic does, and several other languages do, where cat would be one thing and cat would be a different thing. So
Right.
just wanted to kind of touch on that and say that we're talking about precisely that at this moment.
Sometimes it has 3 degrees.
Sometimes indicated in a romanized system by a double writing of the vowel.
Right, you could see it twice, or you might see a colon after the vowel.
Yeah,
both indicate twice as long,
Mhm.
perhaps. Yeah, and Finnish could have 3 vowels, triple length vowel, which I think that's the only language that does that.
Oh, Finnish.
So that I think that's really cool. Well, let me share my PowerPoint and give you an overview of what's going on with the basics for the differences between Arabic and English phonology, and where you would get interference phenomena, but also how the mental representation of the sounds is different for the Arabic speaker and the English speaker, so that even as an English teacher, you may not realize that what you think you're telling them is not what they're hearing, and vice versa. So let me share this graph here. Okay. Yeah, so the first thing to think about, and this is not something that I would expect anybody to know, but it's something that you may not be aware of, is how many varieties of Arabic there are, of spoken Arabic. So you say, oh, I know Arabic. Well, what version? And usually we talk about a standard classical Arabic, something like that. But that's really the Arabic that was, I guess, the spoken in 500 years ago, maybe even, and written maybe 1,000 years ago. It would be as if everybody in all the Romance languages still spoke Latin to speak with each other. That would be the formal language. And different dialects of Arabic, the spoken versions of Arabic, are so different that they can be mutually unintelligible. So the main division, I don't know if you can see this here, but the main division is between the Maghrebi or Western dialects of Arabic and what's called the Mashriki Eastern dialects of Arabic. But lately, dialectologists have also decided there's a middle one they call Egypto-Sudanese Arabic. And that's one that, because of the popularity of television and radio programs in Egyptian Arabic, is understood by both edges. So Egyptian Arabic is coming to be a more dialect that is passively intelligible. I mean, so somebody from Egypt may not understand somebody from Iraq, and they may not understand somebody from Morocco, but the people from the West and the East may understand somebody from Egypt. Okay, so it's asymmetrical understanding. It's just like most speakers of British English will understand American newscasters, and but speakers of American English are unlikely to understand some of the BBC regional programs set in the Dales of Yorkshire or something like that. You can't understand it takes a while to get used to the accent, or Australian English or whatever. So there's a lot more mutual unintelligibility across these dialects, and that also means that the phonology is different from in different places. So I have a student from Sudan and a student from Mauritania, and they have they speak Arabic with one another, but they have a difficult time understanding each other. I also had a student from Algeria, and she could talk to both of them, but actually from the Mauritanian and the Algerian actually understood French, spoke French with each other better than Arabic. So it also depends on whether you're rural or urban. Will have different dialects too. So how do you know what variety your student has, and does it matter? Well, it may not. What you need to do is just observe what patterns your student is showing, and you don't have to know all the different dialects of Arabic. You just need to be open to saying, oh, I wonder if this is something that this dialect of Arabic does. All right, so I'm going to move on to these are the main. Sorry,
I'm just going to add a comment from Siba that I think is important. She says,
yes.
She says she's a native Arabic speaker. She says we have Fosha language, which all Arabs can understand. Are you familiar with Fosha?
So this is a case of diglossia. So this is the formal, I guess, not literary language exactly, but the public language, the language that's spoken by the radio announcers and so on, will be something that everybody can understand. But what you would speak to your family or what you would speak to people in your village will be very different. So you do a lot of code switching.
Okay, so
is that accurate?
She says yes, TV language. She says
TV language. Good. That's exactly what I was talking about. The same thing is true of Greek. Actually, Greek also has 2 levels of speech, because they have such an old. They have ancient Greek to borrow from as well. Okay. So let me move on to the main differences from English. These are the non-vowel differences. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the vowels in the next slide, but these are the differences that that you may not be aware of. Okay, so my primary difference was just like who was it? Who was it who said that the stress pattern was the oh, Linda, was that you? The stress pattern was the biggest difference in your perception. And I would have to say yes, for several reasons. What I want to do is now is I want to show you a clip. This was a kind of a funny video I found when I was looking for different dialects of Arabic, and it was they have 4 Arabic speakers. Now I've forgotten where they're from, but they're from, I think, Iraq and Palestine or something like that. But there are like several clips of spoken Arabic, and they're trying to guess what country the people are from, and can they understand what they're saying? Okay, and they were a lot better at guessing where the speakers were from than understanding what they were saying, which I thought was hilarious. I would have an easier time understanding the English than identifying the location of the speakers in my case. So this was dialect number 3, and I want you to think not just what not just I don't expect you to identify the speaker, but I want you to listen to what they're saying and see how it affects you, an English speaker. So what is your I guess meta-linguistic reaction, your emotional reaction to the way this person is speaking?
Okay.
بنروح نتغدى الحين وعاد حدي يعان. فشوف عاد تبي نيلك ونطلع ويا بعض أو نلاقيك مناك بالمطعم كيفك عاد. بس الزبدة إن حدي يعان وأبي أكل الحين. دبر نفسك.
Right. I don't know where that's from.
That's Emirati.
I want to say it's Emirati, but
That's
is
not
it?
Iraqi as well, and Kuwaiti.
I don't know if that's Emirati, you know. I think
Okay, so they all decided that it was Kuwaiti, and they were right about it. But I want to play just that clip again and see what you
I'm here and she was, and that was it.
how you react to it. So
Where
let
are you?
me, why can't I get this? Right, go back.
To my
The benzene?
Petrol station.
Is it?
صح.
Yeah.
What?
Okay,
How do you know
But
that?
they say that near.
But the so probably means that I spoke to the driver.
Yeah.
And I asked him, where are you? But she's a
Well,
woman.
I don't know why I'm not getting
Is
the right
I think
spot.
it's coming, but yeah.
Okay, so what was your reaction to the way Arabic sounds?
Well, it's funny. At the moment, I was surprised because I expected to have a different experience, but this person used all this kind of time on vowel. It almost sounded like it could be English with a lot of the in the back of the throat. But
Okay, so
I
a lot of guttural sounds, you would say, so a lot of glottal stops, a lot of pharyngals, a lot of
but I heard a lot of expression. That's what I noticed.
a lot of expression, that's right. And a lot of length on vowel, time on vowel. Okay, so there were long vowels and you were probably interpreting that as stress. Okay.
And expression.
Expression. So what were they expressing? What emotion do you think they were expressing?
Don't know, but it didn't seem it didn't seem monochromatic to me. It seemed interested,
Okay.
like somebody who's intrigued or enthusiastic or invested.
They sounded excited about something? Yeah. Did they sound happy or sad or angry or in love or
Maybe even a little bit aggressive.
okay? Aggressive is what I'm is the answer that I get a lot of when I play a clip like this. In fact, this was somebody inviting somebody to go out to dinner with them. Okay. And when I tell people this, they're surprised because it does sound aggressive in a certain way. I mean, it's and there's a reason for that, and that's because in English, actually, let me ask Siva, what did you think? Did you understand what the person was saying?
I'm not sure that Siva can turn on a microphone, so I'm going to watch.
No, but she was typing the answer, so maybe she'll type the answer.
Right.
In the meantime, I'll go back to my my list of points. So the main differences are intonation and perceived stress. If a syllable is stressed, Arabic doesn't lengthen it automatically. Instead, if a syllable is long, then it's more likely to be stressed because of the Arabic stress rule. Arabic does have both long and short vowels. Arabic uses glottal stops and other gutturals as phonemes. Arabic stress is automatic and appears mostly on long syllables, but sometimes on short syllables. And there's a consequence to that, and that's that Arabic speakers may be perceived by English speakers as angry or abrupt or choppy because the intonation goes up and down faster than in English, and there are more glottal stops than expected. So let me hear your reaction to that. So if I'm saying, let's see, come out to dinner with me, come out to dinner with me. Okay. Suppose I didn't lengthen dinner. Suppose I said, suppose it was all the same length. How is that different in its affect, I guess?
To me, it sounds like a younger person is talking. I'm not sure why. A very young person, like
maybe they're talking
who's
faster.
20. Yeah, because I have a problem. That's probably because of my perception. I have a lower speech rate in Russian, so that means I think slower. And I'm trying to work on that through mirroring, but that's another topic. But anyway, I have trouble talking to younger people because they get bored of talking to me. I'm successful with talking to older people, but younger people cut me short, or I'm not very good at building relationships with young Canadians at this point, but I'm trying to get there. So I'm trying to match their speed, their pace, and I noticed that that's how they sound. Do you want to do you want to go to dinner with me? That's what they say.
Okay, so if I say dinner, notice I have enough time to go up and down again as a speaker of English. If I don't have that dinner, if I don't lengthen the I of dinner, go, it's much more abrupt, and that conveys anger in English. Likewise, glottal stops convey anger in English. So if I say, it is too much, I sound angry, right? If I'm using glottal stops, if I say it is too much, that isn't as much of a problem. But if you're teaching a speaker of Arabic, they will hear your glottal stops at the beginning of words. If you say apple, they'll think that the word apple always has a at the beginning of it. So whenever they are going to try to say the word apple, they'll have to say an apple, the apple. They'll have to include the glottal stop because that's a phoneme for them, right? Let's look at another example. Okay, share
Dr. Barr, you have about 3 minutes left.
Yes, I do. Okay, so the next difference is there's no phonemic difference between P and B that was already brought up. Also F and V, apparently. So what's interesting is that the PB phoneme is usually perceived by English listeners as a B, but the FV phoneme is perceived as an F. So Palestine, but Firus. I don't know why it is, but it's not enough to devoice the B in Palestine to Palestine. You also need to aspirate the P as Palestine, right? And the third main difference in terms of the phonology is that depending on whether you're from the Eastern dialects or the Egyptian and Western dialects, you aren't allowed to start a syllable with two consonants. So you either insert a vowel before the cluster, before the consonant cluster, like in Spanish. So sleep would turn into isleep. Or if you're from Egypt or further west, you would say sleep would turn into silip. Okay, so those are some of the basic phonological rules. Now, the other biggest issue for my students is that the vowel space is very different. So Arabic has plenty of vowels, but they make a distinction between length rather than position on the page. So they only have 3 basic vowel positions: green, blue, and olive, plus diphthongs, white, so that's olive plus green, so I, and brown, that's olive plus blue, ow. And all these other dots on the chart are places where they may be able to produce the sound, but only under certain circumstances. So I have a student who is able to pronounce the sound O, but only before an R, because before an R, the sound ah is pronounced aw. So she'll say Q or S instead of QRS, right? Or green will become silver or red before an R, so that here will turn into hair. I can't hear you, right? So just yesterday, in fact, I had a problem. I was teaching them this word packet, and I said, well, a packet, like a packet of cigarettes, it could be it would be a package of things that are all the same. And one of the students kept saying, well, a packet of water, right? I said, I don't don't think you can have a packet of water. Maybe like a packet of water bottles or something. And so we went around like this for a while, and it turned out she was perceiving bucket when I was trying to say packet, and then we got into pocket, and and they were all the same. So all homonyms for her. So I've found that for these students, vowel yoga is very helpful because it's the difference between how to get the mid vowels. So no schwas, no cup of mustard, no red, no rose boat. So anything that's not high and not low is in limbo. So do you have questions about this part of it? But that's the big difference that I find. That's the big challenge for my students.
Well, I'm just fascinated that I love the bucket, packet, pocket, just because they're all three so semantically, conceptually related.
I mean, yeah, you could use them all sort of in the same place, but not quite,
Exactly. And then
not the same.
that they sound the same to a lot of these learners is fascinating. That's a new way to think about. I'm going to use those as my new keywords, I think, for what I've been calling the Bermuda Triangle of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. I also love that beautiful solution to the problem of consonant clusters. That it could be either
you stick the extra vowel at the beginning or stick it in the middle. Then you fixed it. But then when you're trying to spell the word, you've got an extra vowel in there. So what do you do? And Nat, you were saying, and sometimes the vowel disappears. Well, that is sort of the inverse of what we were just talking about. So
fabulous. Well, thank you, Dr. Barr. That's a little round of applause for.
Somebody wants to see the slide again.
There. Want to see that slide again? Great.
Okay. This one or the one before it?
Consonant clusters. Yeah.
Okay. So asleep versus sleep. And let's see, children versus children. And say I had a few more examples. Let's see if I can think of another a couple. Plastic comes out as bilastic in Egyptian Arabic, but iblastic in Iraqi Arabic. And Fred is ifred in Iraqi Arabic, but fired in the Egyptian Arabic, at least according to my sources. So I know that my student from Mauritania has a very difficult time with clusters because she doesn't read, and so when we're trying to read a word with clusters in it, she gets stuck at the beginning. And now that I know that she can't produce two consonants in a row, that helps explain why she has trouble reading those words. I was wondering what Siba has to say about what I've just been talking about. How much of this is true in your own dialect of Arabic?
Great. Well, she did mention she's having some connectivity issues, but we'll watch for her response.
Yeah, I'm very curious as to where you're from, and if you if you recognize any of these.
All is true. She says all is true. Wonderful. All right. Well, we'll let everybody to think about all this as we now invite Aviva Katzenell. Hello, Aviva. Aviva joins us from Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, Florida. I'm sure Boca Raton is an interesting word for all of your students. And Aviva coordinates a sizable intensive English program at the university there with historically a lot of students from the Arabic speaking world. So welcome, Aviva. You need to unmute yourself.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, how many people here have actually got Arabic speaking students? Okay, and do you have them in groups or as individuals?
And Nat has them as individuals and others have them in groups.
Doug, you've got them in groups, yeah?
Yeah, but my students, they want to sound native-like. That's the challenge.
Okay. Okay, so we tend to have different groups of students that come our way. And the group that you see here, can everybody see the slide?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so this is our group of Kuwaiti students, and the Kuwaitis are sponsored by their government. So they tend to come over in packs, okay? And they all tend to be from the same family or the same clan. It's very tribal. So if one comes over, then the cousin or the cousin's brother or the uncle, they're all related. They'll all come over to the same university. And it's wonderful because there's a real sense of family and of excitement and joy at being in a different place together. And then we have our Saudi Arabians who tend to come as individuals or else as married couples. And they tend to be professionals, sort of like seeking to progress their careers, or academics hoping to progress their careers as well. And we get the odd Jordanian and the odd Syrian. And it's very exciting because no two Arabic speakers are alike if they are from different countries. Okay, they may speak a pan-Arabic language, they may be able to communicate, but they are completely different in terms of culture. And as you can see here, that we had a color vowel competition going on, and we didn't have just one student come and stick a post-it note up. We had the whole khamula, okay? Everybody came together. So I want to talk a little bit about the culture, because as an English teacher, I expect to teach language, and my understanding is that if I impart information or if I facilitate knowledge, that the other person is receiving the information, and when they nod their head and say, yes, I understand, and then they understand, okay? With Arabic speakers, culture is really important. So basically 3 very quick anecdotes. The first anecdote, all of these students here, they didn't turn up on a Monday for their lesson. Why not? So one of them came to explain it to me, and normally they have a spokesperson whose English is pretty good. And they said, well, my uncle had surgery in Washington, and we all went to say goodbye to him before he went back to Kuwait. And I said, well, that's great, and I wish your uncle a speedy recovery. But if he's your uncle, Mohammed, then where was Ghazi, and where was Yusuf, and where was the other Mohammed? And they all stood there and they said, wait, he is my uncle, and he's my uncle, and he's all our uncle. Okay, there's kind of like a collective. First of all, they're all related via clan, and they will. Their perception and their language is almost like a collective. Okay, and you have to be aware of that. You're not dealing just with individuals, you're dealing with a group that have strong ties to one another. And when I say, well, yes, he's your uncle, then I didn't understand that from their perspective, he was everybody's uncle. Okay, so that's one thing that I had to take into account. The next quick anecdote is that we had a student who was failing. And his friend Mohammed had, I think his grade was around 80%, and you need to have 75% in order to pass the course. And Mohammed came on a daily basis to argue for Yusuf and say, listen, he's really tried, he's worked hard, can't you help him, please? And we're like, I'm really sorry, this is an academic institution, we can't just change his grade. And in the end, he said, can't you take from my grade and give him a little bit? And it was like, no, we can't do that. And in the end, I said to him, anyway, like, why am I talking to you? I should be talking to Yusuf. And he went, I am Yusuf. It's like, okay. And then the third thing is that, you know, we tend to take in the West evolution for granted. We understand it's a theory, it's an accepted theory in the West. It doesn't maybe it doesn't cross my mind, at least, that other people may find this theory not only unbelievable, but potentially offensive. And I've had several incidences where I've played a clip or I've had a slide, where they refer to evolution. And in one of the cases, one of my students, a very, very bright young boy, and it was a speaking and listening class, and he was listening to a clip, and they just mentioned evolution and monkeys. He got up and said, "This is not correct." And that was that. So I think the reason that I'm telling you these anecdotes is to say that what we think we are imparting in terms of language, linguistically, in terms of the semantics, it may not be understood or it may not be accepted. And the same thing vice versa, in terms of what they're trying to say, they may say one thing and you might understand another. And I'm quite sure this is true of many different linguistic groups, but it's particularly noticeable with Arabic speakers. The other thing that I wanted to say is that, and I took this from Bernard Swan, A Teacher's Guide to Interference and Other Problems, is that Arabic, it's very poetic. It's rhythmic prose. Okay, no matter where the Arabic speakers are from, there is familiarity with the Quran. Okay, and to some extent or other, Arabic speakers they recognize the Quran, they can recite the Quran, and they're influenced by it both in terms of content and in terms of how language works, okay? So that when a student, to me, perhaps might seem overly dramatic, this is the style that he is used to using, that he is used to thinking in, etc., etc. Rhythmic prose. I won't go over too much of this because I'm sure Dr. Barr has talked about most of it already. In terms of the culture, you know, literacy highly regarded, very respectful of teacher figures, but they're reliant on rote learning and on passive receiving of information, which means that they're not going to question you, they're not going to argue with you, they're not going to debate you because their mode of learning is different. You know, sort of tests requiring analysis or discussion, you know, it might even be considered unfair or even offensive from their perspective. Wait a minute, you've given me information, I just have to reproduce it. The written language is revered, colloquial language not so much. They don't like informality, okay? They like you to be the teacher, you're the font of all wisdom and knowledge. It makes them uncomfortable. If they have to, if you put them on equal terms, they will never call you by your first name. It's always teacher or Miss Aviva. And of course, you know, there's certain topics will cause discomfort, and you also have to be aware of how they will react in mixed classes. Now, you might say to me, Aviva, this is all very interesting, but what's it got to do with language? Well, I think that sort of once again, it's very difficult to separate the language here, or their perception and understanding of language, from the culture. And maybe Dr. Barr will say I'm wrong, or just, you know, which is fine because she's got far more knowledge than I do. But the Quran is hugely influential on the way they perceive language and how they deliver language and how they learn language as well. Sort of, once again, from Bernard and Swan, these are the main issues that I've come across in my teaching.
Excellent.
And once again, it's we aim for comprehensibility and intelligibility. We're not aiming for perfection. We need them to be understood. We need other people to be able to follow what they're saying. And these are the types of interference that can cause incomprehensibility. The staccato that you were talking about before, the abrupt kind of language. It's very hard to hear thought groups, to know when a thought group begins and when a thought group ends. And because of the issues with the vowels, then you're not quite catching that word because, you know, sorry, what vowel was that? What word?
It's hard for an English speaker to understand it because we're not hearing the length on the prosody pyramid, the peak of the pyramid that we're expecting. Yes,
exactly.
And I see that you have a lot of the other things that I've up here. So that this is a great combination is a great collection of issues.
Well, the other thing here is that here I've got here Rose spoken as Olive. I actually have a short clip where you hear that the student actually uses Rose instead of Olive. So it's the other way around. The other thing that's worth noticing here, and Dr. Barr already touched on this, is the fact that in Arabic, it's a stress time language, but the stress is predictable and reliable. Okay, there's a pattern. They know where the stress is going to fall within their language. But in English, it's completely random as far as they're concerned, and as far as I'm concerned as well.
It is. It's supposed to be. Yeah.
Exactly. And the other thing is that they tend to avoid contracted forms and elisions. They don't like reduced speech. Okay, they don't like to say I'd. They like to say I would. And even if it's written in front of them, okay, they won't reduce the I would to I'd, okay? And I don't know, maybe Siba can tell us, maybe it's to do with a more kind of formal language or a more poetic language that that is used in the classical Arabic within a learning environment. I don't know. You know, we have sort of like questions, suggestions, offers marked by rising intonation, and that's carried over to English as well. So all of the little signals that tell us when somebody is beginning a new thought group or ending a thought group, we're not hearing from them because they're carrying over from the Arabic. I want to show you, if I may, if I have a few minutes, just a couple of clips because I think they're really interesting. My student here, Khatim, very bright student, and these are all low advanced students, so they're already quite fluent. But in terms of their speaking and listening, it's interesting to see how they move throughout the course. So the first one, Khatim, and I won't play all of the clips.
Hello, I hope you are having a great day. My name is Hatim Al-Utaybi. I'm from Saudi Arabia. My native language is Arabic. The purpose of taking this course is to be as good as I can in pronunciation, so I could deal with people in a better way, and so I could express my thoughts and feelings.
Okay, thank you, Khatim. So I don't know, what people notice there in terms of what we've talked about? What was noticeable?
I'll just mention the very first thing I heard was how our own keyword phrase, gray day, is exactly what I heard when he said, it's a great day.
Great day.
So that tells me that you know, he has final consonant issues.
Great day, gray day. Yeah.
Did anybody hear anything else interesting there?
I liked express instead of express because that's exactly where the stress would fall in Arabic, is on the heavy syllable as opposed to the final syllable. So that as well as
and what about, sorry, but also what about, you talked about abrupt before. Well, Hatim is very softly spoken, so there's nothing abrupt. But what about kind of like almost like a monotone? There wasn't a lot of rising and falling, or would you disagree? What do you think?
I would say that there was rising and falling, but it wasn't where we expected. So it had the impression of being monotone for us, but we weren't getting the rise at the end of the thought group like we want, that like would cue us into where the sentence ended. And also it felt like there was not enough pausing between thought groups. So if there was more of a contour, I think it would have been easier to follow.
Well, this is interesting because, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that, so we were working towards a 3-minute thesis speech. And we talked about thought groups, and we talked about stress, and we talked about rising and falling intonation. And this is Hatim and his Hamlet. So let's listen to a little bit of this and see what he's taken on.
To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks.
Okay, so that was Khatim doing Hamlet for us. Any thoughts on that?
That was very difficult to understand.
Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
I'm watching Now's face. Now, could you speak to that?
I have no idea.
I mean, part of that is that it's Shakespearean English. So,
Sometimes I could catch, but I didn't catch any whole sentence or something. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
I was surprised at your reaction, Karen. I thought you would say it was easier to understand, because that's exactly what I thought. It's impossible to understand. The first extract was much better. But it turns out that it was difficult to understand for you as well. That's interesting.
I mean, it was slower. You would think slow would be easier, but no, it's not for our ears. Yeah.
No, it seemed almost, sorry, but it seemed almost absurd. Like I should be able to understand it, but it absolutely was difficult to understand. So it was, yeah.
So I think here, you know, with trying to focus on which word am I going to stress, you know, it actually puts an immense cognitive burden on them. Okay, when they have to actually associate stress with length, with time. One of the things that I want to show you really quickly in that case is Nada. Nada is also from Saudi Arabia, and she was working on her 3-minute thesis speech. And what she did was she indicated thought groups, or what she thought were the thought groups. She decided what her focus word was going to be. She decided what her peak vowel was.
Mm-hmm.
And she also signaled where she thought the rising and the falling intonation were. And let's just hear very quickly what her speech sounded like. Okay, Nada.
A comfort zone is a secure place, but nothing ever grows there. Studies shows 90% of people prefer to stay in their comfort zone. One of the main reasons why people find it difficult to leave their comfort zone is because it is a place free of stress. When people perform the same thing over and over again, they feel more comfortable. So, why should you gear towards change? The comfort zone.
Okay, so we got any thoughts on that?
That was a lot clearer, although she had a lot of final intonation where I would have expected non-final intonation, but you know, comma instead of period. But yeah.
Okay. Did we hear any of the other kind of sort of attributes of typical Arabic speakers while she was speaking?
Lots of
people.
People, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that people and people also, and I guess one of the things that comes to my mind is I don't think there's a P in the written Arabic alphabet, so they just use the B.
That's right.
And that's going to be the problem with them translating it, I think.
Well,
but my question, sorry, Dr.
It's because they don't have the sound in the language. I mean, we have TH written only one way in English, but we have two different phonemes. But in Arabic, P and B are not only written the same way, they are the same sound in the mind of the speaker. Yeah, Anna, you had a question?
Yeah, because I also heard a huge difference the letter T, because they say something like two and instead of two, and I would like to ask if all of them do that, because I also feel this difference in other speakers, not only Arabic, but also other speakers.
I don't hear the difference that you were producing.
Yeah, I think that is a kind of drier T, like two instead of two. Yeah, it's like drier, I think.
To me, it feels more like a difference in the vowel, but
yeah, also
behind the teeth, or is it further back on the alveolar ridge? But for a speaker of English, that makes no difference.
Okay.
But what I would ask Anna, how comprehensible was Nada? Could you follow her speech?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, unless for some moments where we had a different stress, but few words. In general, I could understand.
Okay. Well, I have to say that when Nada joined us, she joined us as an intermediate student, and she spoke very little. Even as an intermediate, she could read, she could write, but she spoke very little. And she actually made huge progress in terms of her ability to express herself and being willing to express herself out loud, because, you know, sort of she was there with her husband and both of them came to class, and wherever he went and she went and vice versa. And, you know, she was shy. And, you know, in the end, she stood up in front of a room full of people and she gave her 3-minute thesis speech, not reading, just speaking. It was wonderful.
Wow.
So I think she came a long way. And I think the reason why I wanted you to hear this, because I think she is comprehensible. And that as a teacher on a course, I don't have the time to deal with every little problem. I can't. I've got X amount of students in the class. I need my students to be comprehensible. I need to know that when they go to their next, to their graduate class at the university, that the teacher will understand them and that the fellow students will understand them. And that's what we're aiming for. And I think Nada did really well.
I think you're absolutely right, because if somebody is saying people instead of people, that's just one word or one sound that's a problem. But if you can't hear where their thought groups are, or if they're stressing the wrong syllable, or if they have the wrong vowels, that's a much more global problem for an English listener, I think, than just, I mean, P and B is more noticeable because we can say, oh, they switch P and B, but in terms of comprehensibility, that's not such a big deal.
Right.
You know, so in terms of just of implications for teaching, and I think that we need to know this as teachers, and just to, we need to be aware that the cultural is not separate from the linguistic and from their perception of what we are trying to give them. Okay, and also in terms of what we understand. Just because an Arabic speaker nods positively and says yes, okay, it doesn't mean that automatically that they understand or that they agree or that they're going to comply. You know, in terms of their culture, they don't argue with the teacher. They may have a completely different opinion, or they don't want to lose face. They don't want to lose honor by saying that they don't understand. And we have to be aware of this. And it took me a long time to figure it out and to be aware, and for me to be sensitive to their sensitivities, and also to how that interplays with language. I tend to focus on comprehensibility, which means that I focus on the 1 or 2 really challenging vowel sounds, which make the difference between understanding one word as another. I like to focus on thought groups. They don't do connected speech. They don't like to do connected speech. They don't like to do reduced speech either. So that's an issue, especially if they want to be like native speakers. Okay, the connected speech and the reduced speech, that's where the native-like fluency comes in. And also in terms of the rising and falling intonation, because that's what signals to us, the English speakers, where the thought group ends or where a thought group begins. And so they have to be aware that that is part of the tools that they need in order to convey that it's not just down to saying a word or a phrase or a sentence. As I said before, the technical and semantic, you can't always separate them, and I wouldn't separate them. That dedication is dependent on motivation as well, and that, you know, we all know that if you're motivated to learn a language, then you'll go far. If you're there just because, you know, it just happens to be that somebody's paid your ticket and your tuition and all of the families there, might not get as far as you would like your student to get. So you have to find other incentives. Color vowel competitions are a great incentive, by the way. And I also want to say about all of the Arabic speakers that I've come across from all of the different countries, they are some of the most warm and charming people that I have ever come across. They come from a culture of hospitality. They come from a culture of wanting to make other people feel good. They come from a culture of big expressions, okay, and of huge adjectives. Right now I don't have any Arabic speakers in my classes, and I'm feeling very forlorn because I really miss them and I wish that they were there.
Thank you, Aviva.
Thank you.
Where are you teaching right now?
Oh, I'm teaching at FAU.
Florida Atlantic University.
Florida, okay. What is your English accent? You sound maybe Scottish or Irish?
It's not an English accent. It's a
Scottish
accent.
Scottish accent, excuse me. Your accent of English. How's that? Is that better?
That's
so I grew up in Israel. I grew up in Israel.
Right.
And I lived in London for many years. So the accent.
So where did you get the Scottish accent? What town?
I lived there till the age of 10.
What town?
Glasgow.
Glasgow. Okay. Because and I was just noticing that Glasgow is kind of noted, I understand, for not being really expressive. So that may also be a contrast between the Scottish English that you grew up with and the big emotional gestures of your students.
Yeah.
But I mean, the one thing that I'd say very quickly just before I go, and this is different from all the other demographics that we teach, that it's very noticeable that with Arabic speakers, that culture and perception and language all connect very strongly. And it's less of a, today we're going to learn this vocabulary and this structure, and they'll go away, they'll implement it, okay? There are many more things at play, both semantically and phonologically, and in terms of the grammatical structure, like the lack of the verb to be, that, you know, that we sort of, that comes into play. And it's nice to be mindful of it because it's helpful in the teaching and learning, I think. And maybe Doug can tell me if I'm on the right path or not.
Well, Aviva, I want to thank you, and everybody we can thank Aviva. I really appreciate you bringing in the cultural piece, not just once, but throughout, to drive home to all of us that we may want to really spend some extra time with the thoughts that you've provided us. So thank you to both of you. I want to just raise some awareness, and then we'll have some final Q&A as we exit. But just know we're heading into our summer at English Language Training Solutions, and July will be a fairly quiet month, but not a silent month. I will mention that something that's been on our mind a lot lately, and I'm going to share the training calendar here with you using the link that I've just provided at colorvowel.com/training. You'll see a couple of things, especially all of you who know Color Vowel, that we're shifting slowly into a new learning platform. So our level 1 classes are now offered on a new platform. If you're referring your friends or your colleagues, those are listed at the top of our training calendar, and you can go look at those. This is an on-demand course, but I want you to know about July, not a silent month. We do have a workshop that is brewing and coming together for July 13th. That is a Wednesday, middle of the week, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. with Dr. Robin Barr and some special guests that I'm still putting together. But I'm not hunting, I know who they are, but it's a really special topic that we've not done a great deal with in the past, but that's becoming, I would say, extremely relevant these days, and that is English learner literacy.
I mean, that's my research, so I'm happy to talk about it. Exactly. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, so Dr. Barr will be sharing, a recent presentation that she's developed into a workshop, and our special guest will also be sharing some strategies. But so you'll see this is a bit of a, we don't have a graphic yet, but English learner literacy is strategies for bridging the gap between spoken and written English, and really getting into the brain, as Dr. Barrs want to do. But what is it about the low literacy brain, especially the adult low literacy brain, that complicates the matter of becoming more literate? And then also a question of early readers, young readers and children, and what's happening in the brain when they are successful or when they struggle. These are all very important issues, especially if you work with children or with low literacy adults. So I hope you'll join us for that. Other than that,
it's my favorite thing. I'm so excited. Oh,
I know, mine too. It's all part of a larger plot. Someday we're going to be making it to Sesame Street, and I just know that in my heart. So we're working on that slowly. And I say that not in jest. Also know that we have all of our fall program up for all of our fall courses. However, note also that it was brought to my attention that a lot of our fall courses starting in August, especially those level 2 workshops, are the red ones. A lot of them are during the day, and these will be changing. If you just think of the red ones as our electives, a lot of these are going to be, some of these will shift into evening classes. So just watch for some little changes here before you really commit. And that'll happen in the next week or so. It's just, we realize that a lot of teachers really are working during the day. And so we're aiming to meet those needs, okay? Feel free to contact us at Jennifer. I say us. Feel free to contact Jennifer at ColorVowel, Jennifer@colorvowel.com. She's the great one to contact there with questions about your ColorVowel journey. And that's all. I'd like to head into any burning final questions. We've gone a little over compared to past sessions, but super interesting information. I want to thank Aviva and Robin once again. Any final burning questions or observations?
I just want to ask the people who are teaching Arabic speakers if they have anything additional to add from their experience that we haven't talked about. Because Doug, you said that you have a group.
I do, and I lived in Saudi Arabia for 5 years.
Oh, well, so
I got to listen to a lot of Arabic. I didn't learn to speak very much, but enough where I can listen to them. And yeah, I definitely would second your statements about the culture and the language are mixed. And I guess the first thing that hit me in living in Saudi Arabia was, in the United States, we separate church and state, but in Saudi Arabia, it's the same. It's one and the same. And then you'd be surprised at how many things are the same because of that link. And the language certainly is, yeah. And I also agree they have such great senses of humor. I know it took me a while to deal with them. Most of the people that I worked with had graduated from at least a 2-year college in the US. So they spoke very good English. And I just remember one day, one of the lieutenants got very angry at me for something. And I said, look, Ahmed, I said, enough is enough. The Quran only allows you to stay angry for 3 days, and then the grudge is finished. So today is Wednesday. I'm coming back on Saturday. And when I came back, he was still laughing about it. So everything works out.
Amazing.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much.
I had a suggestion. Aviva, you were saying that it's hard to get them to do linking, right? And to do contractions. And the way that works for the way I guess facilitate that is by teaching them whole phrases, big chunks, or singing, so that they learn the whole phrase rather than seeing the separate words. And Brock Brady taught me this trick. It's a. So we what's that? It's a chair. It's a desk. And because otherwise they will forever say it is a, and glottal stops and no contraction, and they're astonished when they learn that itza is really 3 words. But that way they were able to get the intonation right and get the rhythm right in advance. So when you find your students having trouble connecting up the phrases, sometimes that's not an Arabic thing. It's a reading thing. So you may want to try working on the other side of the brain for a while using music or chants.
Linda, you said you were about to say something.
I had a Sudanese student, very high level English, college teacher. But when she was reading, she would automatically lengthen out the contractions. If the thing she was reading aloud said can't, she would read it as cannot.
Yeah.
So I think there's some room to always visit metalinguistically, sort of the legitimacy of contractions, and that they are actually the exemplars of reduced speech in writing, right? But we do have, we have to have those conversations to change minds, and even so. I'll mention, sorry, one other thing on my mind. We will not have Fridays at 5 in July. That's pretty much a month of rest, except for that workshop on the 13th of July. But
that's
we
a Wednesday.
will have, that is on a Wednesday.
Yes.
We will have a pure English practice on the 1st and the 3rd Thursday of July. So I hope you'll join us and send your students. We're having a lot of fun these days. It's becoming more and more, whoever has their camera on, I'll find somebody and ask them a few questions, and then I'll take some of their language and we'll work on it in a chant and so forth. So we're having a great time there, and you'll sort of see a cast of characters that show up regularly, new faces, all kinds of things. Doug is a regular, Ina's a regular. We love seeing Ina there. I think Robin always comes. Now is often there. So we do love seeing you. So thank you everybody for coming. Have a safe, restful summer. Check in. We'll be here. We're just not quite here in Zoom. Okay. Super grateful to our presenters today, and welcome. We hope to see you again soon. Okay. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.